today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about how to invest in your partnership in a way that matters. Partnerships, really all relationships, thrive on emotional maintenance. Repair rituals are really about regular investment. They keep love solvent. 2 to 3 minute repair ritual. Acknowledge the hurt, express appreciation, end with a hug. Relationships are about peeling an onion. Mental health, mental well-being, personal growth, becoming the person that we aspire to be. It's about peeling the onion. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we're talking about trust deposits and repair rituals, daily investments that matter. And this is part of the Building a Partnership series that we're wrapping up 2025 with. You may recall the first episode was how to have a real partnership. The last episode was how to be real and comfortable with one another. We talked about micro-truths, and now we're talking about trust deposits and repair rituals. Really what we're talking about is the more complex process of building your emotional bank. What am I looking for here? Your emotional portfolio. That's really what I'm talking about. Your emotional portfolio, right? A financial portfolio isn't just your bank account. It's your investments. It's your assets, right? How to build your emotional portfolio. I like that a lot. We're going to start using that a lot more here on Rich Relationship. All right, so we're going to open up with a listener question. We love each other, but every small argument feels huge. How do we stop losing ground every time we disagree? For those of you who have been listening for a while, a common example might be you left the cap off the toothpaste and there's toothpaste on the counter now. Or it might be the seat is up again. Very popular refrain. Or it could be a little more complex. Are you ever going to empty the dishwasher? Why am I always doing the cooking? Whatever it is, it isn't just about that thing. It feels like Hiroshima. You see, partnerships, really all relationships, thrive on emotional maintenance. If you have a best friend and the two of you are out of touch for a while, the next time you see each other, it might feel a little disjointed in some ways because you haven't been making those small, consistent deposits of connection. And really, your wife or husband, I hope, are your best friends, right? I hope that marriage starts with best friends. And if you're having trouble seeing your marriage, your partner as your best friend, it might, in 2026, it might be something you might want to work towards, because really, what better ally do you have than the person you've chosen to live your life with? Small, consistent deposits of connection is what we're talking about. And sometimes we're going to make large deposits, but the small, consistent ones are important in the same way that your financial portfolio is built by saving bits and pieces, or it might be you buy a house together, which is a big investment financially and there's an opportunity to build a lot of equity when you buy a house together. In that same way, your emotional portfolio is going to be made of small, regular deposits, plus the occasional large investment. I'm very fond of telling people that intimacy cannot occur without vulnerability. Vulnerability cannot occur without trust. And trust isn't built in one moment. It's built through a daily experience of safety. And safety doesn't really occur emotionally unless there's consistent, caring conversation. When the conversation is uncaring or thoughtless or careless, safety is eroded. When conversation is loaded with snide remarks, criticism, sarcasm, the emotional bank erodes and safety becomes less and less. Repair rituals are really about regular investment. They keep love solvent, even when stress is high. And I'm not talking about marital stress. I'm talking about life stress, right? Resilience occurs within stress. Let's go, if you want to build your muscle, you have to stress your muscle. If you want to build your mind, there needs to be stress. There are stresses that we don't want and stresses that we do want. We don't want to tear a muscle because we tried to stop the car from rolling down the hill, which was clearly too big for us to stop, and we end up dislocating our shoulder. We do want to tear a muscle by working with weights that are within our grasp. So there's external circumstances that provide a kind of stress that we don't desire. And then there's building up our tolerance for stress so that when those external stressors happen, we're better prepared for them. Repair rituals are like that. Repair rituals build us up so that love is solvent. In the last episode, we talked about micro trust building. And we actually talked about sharing things that make you a little uncomfortable. That would be an example of, all right, I'm lifting a weight regularly that I can handle, but it's uncomfortable to do, right? I'd rather just sit around and eat popcorn. So let me give you a true example. Remember Brad and Gwen? My favorite clients of all time. They're my first clients that I ever worked with, and they're the last clients I'll ever work with, and they're the clients I work with today. They're a cover name for true things that aren't attributed to any one person or couple. But they're true because I've experienced them in my own life and with other couples. Brad and Gwen noticed that conflict still triggered old defenses. Gwen would withdraw, Brad would get reactive. What was causing it? Well, we later did some work on what was causing it. What was causing it was they had some old wounds, old hurts, old emotions, old beliefs from their childhood, and things that Brad would say would trigger Gwen's stuff, and things that Gwen would say would trigger Brad's stuff. But in the short term, they weren't going to clean all that up like that. They needed ways to work around that. Let me give you some more context. From a brain science point of view, the part of our brain that recognizes that recognizes danger, drives us to fight, flight, or play dead. When that part activates, there's not a lot of rational thinking. Brad and Gwen were being activated. They were triggered, or activated is what we call it. But what Brad and Gwen needed to learn first, before they could deal with the deeper hurts that part of their brain was defending, or that it was mistaking the other person as doing, because they had a fear that they were going to be hurt in the same way. Let's say that Brad had grown up in a very controlling household and that Gwen had been physically abused as a child by her father. Sometimes Brad would say things with a certain tone that would bring up Gwen's fear of being abused, and she would say, "You can't treat me like that, Brad." And when she would say, "You can't," it would bring up his stuff about being controlled. And the two of them would get very reactive. Even though really stressful had happened, they reacted to each other. Before they could handle that, they needed to learn how to deal with the reactivity. Before she could deal with the trauma of the emotional abuse she experienced as a child, before he could deal with the trauma of constantly being controlled and manipulated by his parents as a child, before they could really go deep and handle that, they needed to learn how to just manage their day-to-day stuff. So first, they learned to recognize that being reactive doesn't work. They made a decision. They were not going to engage with each other when they're reactive. Because as we mentioned in the previous episode, when we're reactive, it's I'm going to win, you're going to lose. And when two partners are reacting and they both want to win and they want the other person to lose, that's a lose. Anytime we hurt our partner and win, or feel like we're winning, we're actually losing. Because our partner is our greatest asset, our best friend. Kill your best friend, you're alone. So the first thing they needed to do was learn how to handle that reactivity. And we gave them mindfulness, meditation, and prayer exercises. They chose which ones were best for them. Brad engaged in prayer. Gwen engaged in mindfulness. Brad had a belief in God. Gwen wasn't so sure. Didn't really matter, because the studies show that whether you believe in a higher power or whether you just want to be mindful, it encourages you to hang out in the thinking part of your brain. So whenever they reacted, the first thing they did was hang out in the thinking part of their brain. That was the first ritual. It was a trust deposit. When Brad got a little, Gwen would say, hey, I know you don't intend this, but I'm getting a little scared. I need to go reset. And if Gwen said something that brought up Brad's fear of being controlled, he'd say, hey, I'm sure you don't mean to manipulate me or control me, but I'm getting a little spooked right now. I need a little time to reset. And because they knew they both had this going on, they identified it in the work we were doing, they were able to say, hey, reset. In fact, they had a safe word. It was mango. So anytime something they came up, one would just say mango, and they both go and reset. It was just understood that if they didn't go and reset, what was going to happen was they were going to kick each other's butts emotionally and destroy their beautiful best friend ever, forever friendship. The next repair ritual was after mango. They began 3-minute repair routines, acknowledging hurt, expressing appreciation, and ending with physical connection. So Gwen might say to Brad, I thought you were raising your voice there, and it brought up, I actually, it would go like this. It's an I statement typically, self-correction. Hey, Brad, I felt scared when I thought you were raising your voice because it brought up some old hurt for me. And I really appreciate you, and I know that you really have our friendship and our partnership at heart. And then they'd hug. Or Brad might say, I actually felt a little frustrated, and if I'm honest, a little scared when you were talking to me about managing the girls' school lunch experience tomorrow, because it reminded me of how my parents were always telling me how to live. And I know that you weren't trying to do that. I love you. And then they would hug, right? Very basic ritual. 2 to 3 minute repair ritual. Acknowledge the hurt, express appreciation, end with a hug. And the first thing that came up was they realized that they weren't arguing anymore. And I want to be really clear, arguing is not the same as disagreeing. They weren't arguing anymore because they were repairing faster. And also, after they did the repair, then they could return to, all right, let's talk about the girls' lunch needs tomorrow, or let's talk about that thing where I raised my voice a little. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out and find a way through it. They started to find, well, why was that important to you? Why was this important to me? Wow, look, we care about the same thing, just in different ways. Here's the deal. Making that decision that you're not going to be reactive, or a better way to put it is that you're not going to express your reactive moments in a way that's destructive of the friendship and the partnership and the love and the relationship. That decision is huge. And the decision to repair those moments and communicate what's going on and reveal the hurt and be vulnerable, those little micro trust activities create macro security. Brad and Gwen felt safer and safer and safer with each other. And eventually, we got to do work on Gwen's trauma around people being loud around her so that she could deal with louder people more effectively without reacting from her old hurt. She felt more empowered in the face of other people's anger. And Brad, when we did the breakthrough session together, released all his stuff about feeling manipulated and controlled and realized that no one could manipulate him and control him, that he was a free and clear individual guiding his own way forward with the help of his lovely bride, Gwen. And they stopped having that problem. But as I'm always telling you, relationships are about peeling an onion. Mental health, mental well-being, personal growth, becoming the person that we aspire to be. It's about peeling the onion, peeling away anything that is not that person. I want you to know that as the year wraps up here, I so appreciate the new listeners. The Rich in Relationship podcast, we have over 400 episodes at this point, and our listeners, our subscribers keep growing and growing, and they grow because you like us, you subscribe to us now, wink, wink, and you recommend us to your friends. because the content is so powerful. And if there's something you want to hear about, let us know. And look forward to what's coming in 2026. The Business of Family is going to be about not just the emotional business, but the financial business. It's not going to be just about the shared vision, but it's about how you and your partner and even your children can engage in this together. There's going to be all new tools that we're going to give you to make your family the most crack-a-lackin', most efficient, most loving tribe on earth. In the meantime, have an amazing day and a fantastic tomorrow.